just is unsettling. It just makes you feel like the country is, the level of political polarization in the country is at a danger point. Especially with the internet. I think the internet feeds a lot of the extremism that we're experiencing in the country, drives people.
Unless the programming changes, the rhetoric and how the programming is set up is not actually calming the tone or restoring civility. We'll see if that programming changes, but if it stays the same, that is escalating it. It is not a civil approach.
Even as there's all this talk about unity and tamping down the rhetoric and stuff, not so much in some of the quarters, some allies pretty close to Trump, including potentially his vice presidential pick.
We heard J.D. Vance, Senator J.D. Vance, who is one of the leading picks for vice president, in a tweet say, this is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination.
This is Joe Biden, who called half of Americans Neanderthals, that painted, along with the Democrat Party, many Americans as either white supremacist wannabes. Trump was going to be a dictator, and we're supposed to change the tone.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and folks, I'm at a complete loss for an explanation of this weekend's events. Monday has arrived, and it's time to make sense of what happened. First off, we need to call for civility from both sides, and it is crucial to address why Republicans are misguided in blaming critical race theory and Biden for the assassination attempt on Trump.
The rhetoric out of the Republican side, out of Donald Trump himself or Don Jr. about the attack on Paul Pelosi, mocking him, making up a rumor that this was some gay sex event, right, and wasn't a terrible attack by someone who was politically motivated and could have taken his life. That is the genesis of this. This goes back to 2016.
Look, every speech that Donald Trump gives, he talks about if Joe Biden wins, the country dies. If Joe Biden wins, everything is over. The Constitution falls apart. So, let's be real here. This isn't because Joe Biden says Donald Trump is an existential threat. Both sides are saying the exact same thing here. So let's be a little self-aware about what we're talking about here.
At a campaign rally in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was apparently injured by flying glass as loud popping noises started going off during a rant. Immediately, I received a text from a Trump supporter accusing my guys of attempting to assassinate President Trump. When I questioned this wild accusation of your guys, I was met with gaslighting for not showing anger against Biden and the Democrats. Without any detail about who was responsible, MAGA had already formulated that it was Joe Biden's doing. In a recent interview, Senator Ron Johnson made a shocking connection between critical race theory and the shooting incident.
The greatest threat to our nation right now is we're horribly divided. But again, in general, we share the same goals. So, why are we so divided? Well, there are political figures, there are political groups. I would argue that's what identity politics is about. That's what critical race theory is about. So there are people who are purposely trying to divide us for political advantage.
Johnson suggested that the division brought about by CRT discussions has somehow created an environment where such violence could occur. This claim is not only baseless but also dangerous, and it attempts to divert attention from the real issue of political violence by scapegoating a complex academic framework that has nothing to do with this event. Unfortunately, the Trump base doesn't do their own research. Similarly, J.D. Vance claimed that President Joe Biden inspired the shooting.
He tweeted in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. Now, again, we don't know the motivation of this suspect. They're still investigating that. That is a key aspect of it here. But you're already hearing some Trump allies seizing on this and trying to turn it into something as a wedge issue of sorts, including someone who could be the number 2 on the ticket.
This assertion was met with a strong pushback from the ABC host, who rightly pointed out that there is no evidence linking Biden to the shooting.
President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And of course, in March, He said, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
It's critical to note that blaming political opponents without evidence only serves to deepen divisions and heightens the possibility of political violence. The host on ABC effectively countered Vance's unfounded claims by emphasizing the lack of evidence and calling for more fact-based discussion. This pushback is needed too. It helps maintain journalistic integrity and prevents the spread of false narratives. But we all know that right-wing media has their own narrative, much like a state-run television program that we'll all have if Trump manages to win a second term. Remember, democracy or dictatorship is the choice. The facts tell a different story about the shooter. Juan Williams reminded Fox News viewers that he was a Republican, not a Democrat, which challenges the narrative being pushed by MAGA supporters. Trump's injury was likely caused by flying glass, not a direct bullet hit. The social media debate was swift. Some claimed it looked staged, while MAGA supporters updated their profiles with images of Trump in defiance, bloody ear and all. They are even selling t-shirts portraying Trump as saved by God, blaming Democrats and the media for the incident. MAGA's quick blame game highlights the contempt prior to investigation, distracting from Project 2025. Remember that Project 2025 is essentially a choice between our democracy and a dictatorship, where political violence would be the status quo. This event has become a litmus test for America's divided state. How many churches were preaching politics from the pulpit this Sunday? This simple question can determine whether churches are following true Christian principles or Christian nationalism. Trump's faithful see him as both the victim and the hero, a familiar narrative with MAGA mouthpieces like Marge the Trainwreck Green and Lauren Boebert. It's a trusty go-to tactic that they use all of the time. Political violence has no place in America, but here we are. As Mahatma Gandhi said, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, and he's absolutely right. We must strive for peace and understanding, grounded in facts and reason, and we must focus on what Donald Trump and MAGA will do to this country if they win. We must focus on stopping Project 2025 and keep our democracy intact, and that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.